Thank you. So the issue that we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes is about public toilets. And I think that we can talk about toilets, but we are also aware that what we're really talking about is access to health, access to a washroom, to cleanliness, to the ability to anywhere you are in the city or in whatever condition you are in, to be able to have the basic human rights of being able to go to the washroom in dignity, with dignity. And many of us have had a few situations in our lives where we felt extremely awkward because we haven't had those facilities. There are many people who live with that as a daily issue in their lives. And our office is situated at Higgins in Maine, which in the downtown area is what we refer to as a public toilet or a toilet desert, in that there are very few public washrooms anywhere. And if you don't look a certain way or have money, it means that you are unable to use a washroom, and therefore create both health issues for yourself and for the community. So this issue that this is a community right, it is a human right, got my wife and I, Ray, and myself, working years ago. And what I'm going to do is give you a little presentation about some of our work that we've done. And this first project, which is the pop-up Winnipeg public toilet, is something that we did in combination with the downtown biz to ask a basic question, which was, does everybody need a public toilet? Will more people come downtown and feel safe coming downtown if they have a public toilet? What is the role? Why is it that public toilets have been so unsuccessful in Winnipeg, but also elsewhere? And how can we make them work? How can we reach out to the community at large that is maybe the most vulnerable, but also to every citizen, whether you are a woman, a senior citizen, a person with gender fluidity and diversity, whether you are a child, whether you have any particular condition, whether you have a caregiver, any of those things. Because what we want to avoid is having people unable to be public, i.e. to visit their city, to be part of their city, because they are concerned about not having. So this first oh, that's very funny. I have to go and get this. Here we go. So at the very beginning, we state, my Winnipeg. And this was a statement that we began to do throughout the city in 2018, which is a few years ago, but we have continued. Elderly people, disabled people, people with caregivers, women and children, all have their lives limited by the lack of public toilets. So we worked with the downtown biz and with Salome Mission. And what did we do? We thought we wanted to be able to put public toilets into a place that everyone would need, but that was all over the downtown city. And what we did is we developed a two-pronged system. One is we wanted to have a public awareness of what were the issues. And the way that first image is of people crossing their legs. Everyone, that's almost a universal symbol of saying, I have to go to the washroom. We took a shipping container because we wanted to be flexible. We wanted to have an accessible washroom. And then we wanted to be able to figure out a way to have an ambassador to reach out to the city. And we decided we would take this to the public, and we invited everyone we could through CBC and a variety of other sources to say, come, we want to photograph you talking about why we need toilets in the downtown. And so one blustery winter, something like 100 people came in and crossed their legs in solidarity with people who need to use the washroom at different times in the city, and told their stories about when they had helped someone to find a public washroom, when they had needed a public washroom, and something that they needed to do themselves in the city to be able to bring public washrooms to fruition. And then we developed a poster of each of these people's stories. But that wasn't enough to begin with. What we began to do is we took this to the streets, and we developed posters all over the city. Now, in some ways, these are very private issues. But on the other hand, we look at them and say, together, when we look at these private issues, very, very public issues. And in this case, this person worked at the corner of Portage and Main, and he stated that he had irritable bowel and he needed to have a washroom, and that if he didn't have a public washroom, that he was very limited in his access to the city. This was Michael Champagne saying, why is it that even when there's huge amounts of public monies put into parks, we don't have washrooms? And he's saying, we need to find ways to support our relations who also may be living on the street. Or these two young people who said, our close friends have varying abilities, so finding an accessible public washroom is always on our minds. This is a young Indigenous leader who is saying, well, you know, shit happens. And the reason why this is a particularly important location is that this is right by the Heaps building. And the Heaps building is named after a person who allowed Jewish refugees in the World War II to be able to come to Canada and to Winnipeg. And so we tie in with other social issues. So what did we do? We said, let's try 4 different locations for the public washrooms. And we did this. We had developed a plan. We developed a design. We priced it out and got it built. And then it was in a shipping container. And in the middle of the night, we took it to different parts of the city, 4 different locations over the course of the summer. And we located it in different places. This is what it looked like. There was a large screen that came up, plexiglass screen and steel. When it was closed, it protected the area. And when it was open, the walls shot up in the air, and there were the washrooms. An important part of this is that there is a person there, an ambassador, to make sure people are well, but also to be able to give information about Winnipeg, and perhaps to be able to create an opportunity to be commercial and to sell produce or other goods to be able to help support, the washroom. We tried this washroom all over, and what we found over and over again is that people said they would spend more time downtown if there was a washroom. It felt safe. It felt as though it was meant for them. And throughout the summer, in different locations, the public washroom was a success. Building owners and people around the area said there was less public urination and defecation when there were public washrooms. It seemed like a no-brainer. The cost was so small. The cost was $100,000 over the course of the summer. And of that, $40,000 went into teaching youth how to be a ambassador for the washroom and to do other ways of earning money and creating protection for those people who are using the washroom. And then we took this one step further and involved the university and talked about how we could make this thing part of the city, because it isn't just one. We were after so many. We wanted to have one every 6 blocks, so the distance someone could walk in any direction. And 6 blocks might be too far. We looked at how we would have signage. We invited the people at the university where both Ray and I teach to say where were the spots that public washrooms were needed most. And so we developed an idea where, as though public toilets were dropping all over the city into different areas to represent the way of reaching out and creating dignity for people who had to use the washroom. And we set up those guidelines. Well, that was exciting and it was important. We received a lot of good feedback from that. And then we were able to develop at the next stage. Can you tell me, by the way, how much time I have left? I forgot to set my watch at the beginning.
You're okay, Wins. You got 15 minutes or so. That's 10 minutes, something like that.
10 more minutes? That's
10 more minutes.
All right. So the next stage was COVID, as it turned out. And you know, we've all suffered through COVID, but the people who have suffered the most through COVID are those people who are again the most vulnerable. So many of the social agencies couldn't house the number of people who would normally be in a public washroom, or sorry, be able to go into the social agencies to sleep at night. So there were a lot more people sleeping in bus shelters. There were a lot more people who had no facilities to clean themselves or to go to the washroom. And the City of Winnipeg decided it would try with funding that came from the federal government, partially from the federal government, to set up in cities all over Canada a permanent public washroom in those places, particularly where there were encampments, but with the idea that it would be for everyone. Because what we had found from the pop-up and what we publicized through Plan Canada magazine articles, Canadian Architect, from numerous articles with CBC, is that everybody benefits from having public washrooms. And the reason why public washrooms had such a bad reputation is because they did not have adequate staffing that would be what we refer to as the ambassador. We also found that as more and more people are aware that not everyone is a male or a female, that washrooms were tremendously important. A different kind of washroom was incredibly important everywhere, but in the downtown, where people might feel that they didn't have the right to go into a men's washroom or the right to go into a women's washroom. So what did we do? We did the next step we did was to begin to develop right at the corner of Higgins and Main, near Henry and Main, some ideas for the washroom when we first began. And what we at first called it was Lulu Winnipeg. And that was sort of funny. It was all those things, but it was to try to make something that was big and open and had advertising on it. So this is right by the Thunderbird House. And what we wanted to do was to say, we don't want to hide washrooms. We want to make them bright. We want to make them accessible. As it turned out, this design was over budget. It was too bright. We had to work with it in terms of name. We had to work with it in all kinds of things. But the important part was that we were developing a system that could work as a washroom and would have advertising revenue, so that we would be able to find people who would provide the capital cost, which is relatively small for a washroom, but the operating cost is the part which is the most difficult to cover: maintenance and staffing, and of course all the kinds of things that would happen. In our case, we wanted to be able to create, in the case that in the future a needle drop-off was allowed, or a safe injection site was allowed, a place for this as well. So these are just early examples. We developed it along Henry and Main because it's right in this area. There's a number of social agencies, and we developed a very simple thing. There was one large sink for washing feet, washing hands, washing clothes, and there were a series of toilets that were available, and an office with a window for an ambassador to be there. So what happened? We have begun now building this washroom, and it is will be open in a few weeks. I don't have a most recent picture of it. It is developed as a public washroom, where the important element in it, and I should have another picture. I just realized I've left out something, but I'm going to keep going and tell you about it instead, is that the transparency of the washroom is essential in terms of its safety. And what you will notice when we look at all of these other washrooms, in terms of the images, is that the standard washroom is one where you go in to a vestibule, and then you go into a washroom, and then you go into a stall. And by that time, your privacy is thought to be entire. However, if you are a person who needs help, either because you're being attacked, or because there is a health issue, or if there is a drug issue, then no one knows you're there and no one can help you. And in fact, those people who are vulnerable on the streets have almost inevitably been attacked at one point or another in their lives. And so what is really key here is that you develop a transparent, the actual toilets, and but everything else is visible, so that if someone sinks to the floor, if someone has someone attacking them, people will see where they are. And because these garage doors are open that lead to where the washroom is for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 months of the year, because we have the area of the floor is heated, and so the place remains climatized for making sure the water doesn't freeze, people are able to see in, and it becomes a safer place. It becomes a place where people have washrooms. It is a place for multiple different types of activities to occur, like washing your feet, washing your clothes, getting help from an ambassador for what resources are there, or where to go, or what else to do. There are also areas where there are urinals on the outside. So those times when the place is closed, that people would still be allowed to have a place to go to the washroom. So here we have what this is. And one of the things that we did as we did this work is we spent time looking at each person, not looking at each person, I'm sorry, interviewing many people along the in this area. And these are the people who, as we talked about the washrooms with them and talked about their life experiences, we could see that these are people like you and me, but people who, for whatever reason, have had difficulty in their lives, and they deserve a public washroom like all of us. And we are, in fact, the same as all of these people. We have, although we may not be living on the street, we may at times need to use a washroom. And our project in the end is not so much about public toilets, although it is indeed about public toilets, but it is instead about how we offer to each other those amenities, those basic rights that we offer to one another of cleanliness, of washrooms, of compassion and dignity. And I believe that one of the things that is a vision that I would have, I do have, is that much as I am an architect who produces 10 or 15 buildings a year all over the city, I like to believe high profile, I like to believe they're all important. My life's goal is to ensure that over the course of the next 15 years, that we are able to produce, we are able to create washrooms for all of the downtown area, and as much as possible, make it something which is a normal part of our public life, not unlike streets, not unlike all the kinds of infrastructure that we offer to one another to make our lives better, to make our cities cleaner, and to make each person's life safer. One of the reasons why I'm delighted to speak with you today is because organizations like yours have the ability to help fundraise for washrooms and for things that are of importance to the city. And I believe that the city needs more public washrooms. And I believe that your group, like many others, can contribute to something very close at home that's pressing, that is a pressing need for all of us. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.